What's going on, Workforce? Brian and Annie here, and today we wanted to talk to you guys about Final Fantasy XIV and their development engine and graphics pipeline. Anyway, GameWatch did an interview at Gamescom, and Mina Hinashi, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, translated this on Reddit. This is a great post, and I'll be sure to include the link in the description below. It goes into things like pagos and various other topics related to Final Fantasy XIV. Anyway, I wanted to just focus in on a few things talking about graphics and other things that really relate to the development pipeline of Final Fantasy XIV, and really kind of share my thoughts and hopefully have a nice discussion with you guys about the future of this game. So let's go ahead and dive in. Alright, so the question was, Nvidia just announced their new RTX GPU series. As PC graphical processing power improves, game graphics will become richer as well. Is there a chance of Final Fantasy XIV getting higher graphical settings? And Yoshi responds, I get asked this a lot lately. The other day it was in China, so I guess it might be a worldwide topic of interest. If you're asking me, is there a possibility in the future, then the answer is probably yes, there is. But if you're asking if we have it planned out right now, the answer is no. We don't have anything planned, and it's not in any of our milestones. The reason is very clear. Of course, BD5, so Business Development 5, basically the whole division that Yoshi is over, is researching and working on new graphics. We can't distance ourselves from the latest game development techniques, so we're doing our own tests as well. But Final Fantasy XIV has over 20,000 assets for equipment alone, and I don't even want to think about how much it would cost to convert all of them to a new graphics pipeline. Since Final Fantasy XIV had PS3 support, its graphics technology is 2 generations behind. If we had high poly models, high-res textures, then we could just swap them out, but we don't. A lot of things were created low poly, low res for the startup and cost-saving processes. So we would have to recreate all of them in order to improve the graphics and to look good. Some people say if we don't spend those costs now, then we won't be competitive with other games. But right now we're still plenty competitive within the MMO genre, so there's no need to rush just yet. Plus, we have to measure what percentage of players will actually be using these new GPUs. And as long as Final Fantasy XIV continues to support the PS4, I absolutely want to avoid mixing the graphics pipelines. If that's the case, then we can focus solely on the PC, and it's hard to consider that until, say, the PS4 is replaced by the next generation. And so here at the core of it, talking about the graphics pipeline and the new engine, kind of alluded to the next generation PlayStation hardware, and just the graphics pipeline alone. I'm with him there. I think it's a lot of work. Now, does that mean that they can't start making progress, towards the future of the game? One thing I've often kind of asked is it time for 14 to have a new calamity? Is it time for something really big and drastic to come shape and change the way the world is done? We still have a lot of 1.0 stuff that kind of maybe resides back in the core of the system that hasn't been updated in a while. I can't really speak for that in their plans. This doesn't tell me that they're not planning for that in the future and to see if that's where they want to go sometime after 2020. And my guess is that when you're looking at an adoption rate for that, when they're not on the PS4, it's going to be well beyond 2025 or 26 before they even probably consider dropping the PS4 at that time, and then any other kind of system if they decide to come to other systems. What this does tell me, though, and one of the things that I think is, the question that I have and would have for Yoshi-P is that outside of the graphics pipeline and just updating the visual thing, systems of the game, as far as the core context of it goes, they do feel like they're a lot slower this expansion cycle. If you look at ARR versus Heavensward versus Stormblood. Stormblood, both the expansion launched, it brought in a lot of really good things, but over the course of this year, it has been very thin. And I've said that, I've been saying that actually this whole year, and it continues to feel that way. So I wouldn't relate this to that. I think that, behind the scenes, there's still a lot that they can hopefully be doing. And we'll have to wait and see what they end up doing. The sheer amount of work to do that kind of upgrade, definitely in my mind they might just say, let's do a calamity. Let's, kind of how do we push and reset this? And by the time 2026 rolls around, you're talking about, you're talking about a 13-year-old game at that point. And at that point, does it make sense to have that next Final Fantasy MMO, or does it make sense to continue to support 14 and then just, do something else with it? Your guess is as good as mine. So then the question, does your graphics R&D include the eventual PS5? And Yoshi says, rather than its specs, we're researching the graphical trends that are going on, like what we absolutely need to use in order to stand a chance in the West. We have staff speaking at CEDEC2, and their research is quite deep. If you do your research well, then you'll be able to handle any hardware specs that come out. So we're looking at technology rather than base specs. And I don't even know if they would have the base specs for a potential PS5 at this point. And so that's really, I would love to know what the specs they're researching. Obviously with RTX and what they just announced with the two, 60, 270s, 280s for the graphics cards from Nvidia, it's going to be interesting to see where that pushes forward. If PS5 is kind of slated for 2020, what is that going to look like? I'm really excited for 2020. I think when it heats up, it's going to be very interesting to see what the next generation of gaming entails and what it can do. I obviously think that this game will be supported on PS5. It would be weird if it wasn't. But the question is that it still also would have to maintain PS4 support, and a lot of people will think PS4 limitations, but it's also PC limitations because the graphics settings are also set at various PC levels. Not everybody has powerful PCs. When they dropped PS3 was actually more powerful than the low grade PC specs they had. I remember it was like Core 2 Duo and very small. So they were able to really kind of expand there. And so when that does happen, when PS4 is eventually dropped, that means we'll see a huge jump in the requirements. Now, I don't know if that jump is going to happen, kind of a step at a time on PC, or if that's going to be kind of what we did with PS3 to PS4, kind of that shift. But we'll have to wait and see. So Final Fantasy XIV has realistic style graphics. So do you have to keep up with the latest trends? Are you jealous of cel-shaded games because it's not as strict for them? And Yoshi says, it wasn't my idea to turn Final Fantasy into an MMO, but ever since I took over, I felt that we have to show off what an FF game is. I'm not jealous of those other games. We all like high-end games, and we want to play games like that. We like high-end games, and we want to play games like that. So we think of things about using more bones, making the movement smoother, making the hair flow better, etc. But if we did those things, then we'd only be able to add 2/3 of the amount of equipment per patch. Volume is a part of quality, so we can't let that drop either. It's a double-edged sword. Our current assignment is to keep researching how we can efficiently create high-level assets. If the timing works out, then maybe we'll be able to upgrade the graphics. So this concept of efficiency is coming in here, and I think essentially it's starting to seem, in my opinion, that there is essentially a bottleneck. There is some roadblocks that they're hitting as a development team, especially as it relates to efficiency. Things are just taking them longer to do, and that's essentially the feeling I get with the expansion cycle of Stormblood. And so from here, he's talking about we want to improve the movement, make everything smoother, make hair flow. Those things would definitely be additive. They would definitely be enjoyable. But then at the cost of 2/3 the amount of equipment. What is the offset? How do you get there? How do you staff in a way that makes that you don't lose that efficiency so you can do some of these things? And it sounds like that is essentially the struggle that is happening in the development world for this game right now. So since you joined the board of directors, there's been concern that your workload has gotten heavier and you have less time to spend on 14. So Yoshi says, even before I became a full-time employee, I was already doing similar work to 1. And before I became the BD5 executive, I was already handling a huge Final Fantasy XIV project. And since Hiroshima-san left the company and left Final Fantasy XI in my hands, 11 as well. And after that, there was Dragon Quest Builders 2. And after becoming the company executive, at the end of the day, it meant that I was assisting in development company-wide. I got more chances to talk to the president. When I became an executive, it meant that I had one more monthly meeting to go to, and even after becoming a director, that's just yet another monthly meeting. What I'm actually doing hasn't changed much, but at the very least, but it hasn't cut into the time that is allocated for Final Fantasy XIV. And so it does sound like he's busier. it sounds like he's got a lot of meetings and he's juggling a lot of projects. And that's one of the things that I've expressed concern over him as well. And I don't know if it's just that, but I kind of somewhat relate that to what we're seeing within the cycle of Stormblood. So it's a statement like that makes him sound way busier. A couple more monthly meetings. All these other things that are going on, additional things. Now it's exciting to see that he has access more to the president of the company. Sometimes that helps out a lot when saying, hey, we need this. This is the time we need. This is what we need to do for the 5.0 expansion and beyond, etc. It does make me concerned with his producer-director role. And honestly, I would still love to see, and hopefully that they're really building up people who really love the game and can also work on it. But it still has this feeling of efficiency is something that he is just kind of really hurting for. And I think probably his level of frustration is building in that way. And he's not expressing it here, but we'll get into that. So how many people are working on the game right now? Right now we have to create big things fast. So there usually is about 350 people involved in Final Fantasy XIV's development and a little under 500 people during crunch time. If you include management team, that probably reaches up around 650 people. And then the game is rapidly increasing in scale too. After understanding all of the Eureka mechanics, now that I've shifted assigning to the perform action and housing roleplay features. Of course, I also have to participate in raid balancing too. And then there's the brand new systems that we haven't revealed yet. I have to be the one that's the most knowledgeable about these things. At first, I only had to know raids, instance dungeoning, alliance raids, gathering and crafting, but now it's even worse on those fronts. And he laughs. I don't know if that's the right amount of people. It'd be, I don't know how many work on Guild Wars and WoW and these other games. So I can't say if this is scaled appropriately. 350 people sounds like a lot. It sounds like you can also lose efficiency. As teams grow in size, efficiency can easily be lost and becomes, management nightmares to make sure that things are, and the right things are going. The thing that does concern me is now that we've, got the Eureka mechanics, he's shifting his focus on the perform actions and housing, and I'm just like, I want those systems just to be done, and I'm glad they're there. But every time, when there's a Q&A and it's just housing question after housing question, glamour question after glamour question, it's like, come on, let's get some interesting gameplay systems in the game itself. But, I don't know. It's a little bit problematic and frustrating, and I'd love to know more about what's coming up. And that's really where I think the 5-year anniversary Live Letter 4.4 is going to come in and be key to the success of the game, and really hopefully they can lay out what their plan is for the next 5 years. From this interview, I did not gather that they aren't working on big changes. They aren't working on things behind the scenes. I was talking about this on stream one night, and it's, the thing was like, oh no, they're not going to do that until they do a new engine. It's like, you don't have to wait to do a whole new engine. You can still continue to improve the engine. The question is that when are we going to kind of revisit the core concept of the game, especially the early game? When are we going to have the next calamity as it relates to the lore? When are these things going to happen? Like I said, guys, this is a long interview. He goes into pagos. He goes into a lot of details about different things. The link is in the description below. If you'd like me to cover more of what this interview is talking about, let me know, and I'll see if I can get some time set aside to do that. But I just kind of wanted to focus in on his development efficiency pipeline, the thing that really is, I guess, being that we feel, because he goes in also to Monster Hunter World on how that just took a lot of time to develop those systems, and that, it's a really fascinating interview. Please take time to read it and let me know your thoughts on it. And yeah, let me know if you want me to cover that in the form of a video. But thank you, Yoshi-P. Thank you very much, Reddit, for this, being able to have this interview. I've been waiting for some Gamescom interviews to come out. I'm going to wrap up this video, guys. I hope you have a fantastic day. My name is Brian, and this is Work To Game. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Hey guys, Chris here. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see our next video, go ahead and click right there. If you'd like to see our vlog, click down below. The subscribe button should be right below me here, and you should see all of our contact information. Have a great day, and we will see you next time.